Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I'm your host today, current New Jersey Devils defenseman, Connor Carrick. I'm very excited today to speak with a friend that I made in my time as a Toronto Maple Leaf, Craig Ballantyne. Craig is a business coach, personal trainer turned business coach. He is an author of multiple best-selling books in the Perfect Day Formula, Unstoppable. He also hosts worldwide his Perfect Life workshops. He has facilitated the growth of multiple seven-figure fitness empires. He is the host of the Empire podcast show, as well as Early to Rise Radio. He is someone that I look up to in the business world. He has this really strong sense of accountability and discipline, and where it leads to freedom and creativity in his life. He definitely walks the walk. That's, I think, what I think of when I think of Craig Ballantyne, and that's something that really excites me about our conversation today. And thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. Let's do it. Craig, I'm super excited we're talking today. I don't really remember. We became friends in my time as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And, I think I had really discovered you and your work, and you came across as very no-nonsense. You had a strong relationship with accountability. And I, as someone who's dealt with sometimes scramble-headedness, anxiety for sure, I think it's something that you've dealt with, and you've always done a good job, definitely in your social media channels and in some of the books that you've sent me, organizing a lot of that. And I want to go all the way back to sort of your origin story of, you grew up on a farm, up in Canada, and you've developed now into this high profile business coach with big dreams and a great resume to boot. What were some of the bigger lessons in life moments that kind of took you, and that's a loaded question, I know, but take us along your path there a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Stratford, Ontario, Canada. There were some great hockey players that came through there for the junior B team, like Eddie Olchuk and Rob
Eddie
Blake
Olchuk played up there. He's a Chicago boy. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know he played all the way up there.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been like when some of my first memories was seeing him play. And then Nelson Emerson came through there, was another good one. Garth Snow was the goalie for a while. So, he had some great players. But up in that part of the world, you do two things. You play hockey and drink beer. You drink beer and play hockey. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. You're just going to end up doing it. Now, awesome. Unfortunately, there was no way I was going to play in the NHL, because even when you're good in Stratford, you're not that good anywhere else. Even when you're good in Stratford, there's still a whole bunch of guys that are really good because it's a hockey town. And so I realized I wouldn't play, but I wanted to be involved in the league. So I tried to become a strength and conditioning coach in the National Hockey League. And I went to McMaster University and I got a master's degree, and I started going to hockey conferences and started working with hockey players. And then I stumbled across the opportunity to write for Men's Health magazine, and my life changed really, because you're friends with Matt Nickel, right? The strength coach up in Toronto. I mean, Matt Nickel and I both had similar goals, but we have different personalities. You can't force that guy to sit behind a computer for more than 5 minutes. I can't be in the training room going in depth as Matt is for 5 minutes. And so I'm made for being a nerd, being behind a computer. So I started writing for Men's Health magazine, and he went on to create BioSteel, which is amazing. So I then went and started selling my own workout programs on the internet for the Men's Health type readers. So essentially, I like to say I was Canada's version of Tony Horton, the guy who created P90X. I actually would tell that to the customs guys once in a while, and they didn't really think it was that funny, but I did. And so anyways, I was doing that for a long time. But, if you go back to what I did when I was a kid, which was, drink beer and play hockey. I was a classic binge drinker on the weekend. As an introverted type person, I ended up with anxiety attacks from being introverted, being a binge drinker, living a hypocritical lifestyle, staying out too late, working all the time, and it just caught up to me. And so I had 2 really bad anxiety attacks in 2006, and they were right around King Street West in Toronto, where you and I met in person for the first time. I was living there in 2006, and I realized, something had to change. So I started getting really disciplined, I guess, is one word to describe it, but more ritualized and more into routines and stuff like that, that removed a lot of stress from my life. And I started to say in about 2015 that structure equals freedom. Because when I had the anxiety attacks, Connor, I suffered from the paradox of freedom. I was really fortunate. My online business was taking off. I no longer had to be a personal trainer. And I was lucky. I was a personal trainer to Toronto's rich and famous. Like Pat Quinn was one of my clients for a while when he was the coach. Really great guy.
Love Pat Quinn stories.
Learned so much. I mean, that guy could tell a story, but also give you a great life lesson, in the same workout. And then, but you didn't want to get clubbed by those, like his meaty hands were like the size of my head. It was crazy. So I didn't want to be a personal trainer. I wanted to do this online thing. And so eventually I made my way out of it. But now I didn't have to go in and train people, and I could work all the time, and I could go out all the time in Toronto. And it's really easy to go out all the time in Toronto. And it caught up to me. And so I had these anxiety attacks that, actually forced me to go to the emergency room twice in Toronto. So once to Toronto Western and once to St. Michael's. And, you walk in the emergency room and they take you to the back and they do these tests on you and they say, well, there's nothing actually wrong with you. And you go home. And then I spent the next, I would say it was about 6 months, if not 7 months of trying everything. Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga. I hated all of them, but I knew I would do anything to overcome anxiety. And anxiety is tough to explain to somebody else. Like, people have felt stressed, but to actually have an anxiety attack is very difficult because, you got a scar on your chin, right? And everybody can understand that probably would have hurt. I understand the pain. I understand what it's like to have my skin split open. I don't understand when you're standing there looking at me saying, I'm freaking out, I'm, having an anxiety attack, but you look normal. And that's why there's such a stigma around it in the mental health world. And I was fortunate that I was surrounded by good people who supported me. I was fortunate that I found some good instructors in those disciplines that I didn't like, but were very helpful. And then I was fortunate to have a voice to describe this issue. And I'm also fortunate enough that I don't care. Like, no one could actually make fun of me. I'm like, oh, you have anxiety or anything. Like, it doesn't bother me. So I've stood on stage and talked about this to hundreds of thousands of people so that the people that are struggling with it can understand that there is a way through it. And it's not easy, but it is possible to overcome that. And it starts with getting out of your own head, and a whole bunch of stuff I talk in some of my books and we can unpack here. But I just want everybody to understand that it's something you can overcome.
Yeah, I think I've, for a long time, I'm human. I have had a successful career thus far, not necessarily as successful as I'd like it to be. I've definitely danced with anxiety quite a bit. I describe it almost like, when I'm having bouts, when you're like super thirsty on like a hot summer day or after a workout or like a golf round of golf, whatever, and you just take that big sip of water and there's that moment. I don't drink pop, but it's what all the Coca-Cola commercials sound like. You know
exactly.
what I mean? And I just would feel like I couldn't quench my desire for air. It would all be up in the chest and I'd be really shallow. I remember the one. I was a Washington Capital at the time, and they had made these huge July 1st free agent acquisitions, and I, was no dummy. I knew the depth chart game, and I kind of knew, barring a miracle, where I might be playing, in the minors that year. And my goodness, it was like probably 4 or 5 weeks where, I feel like I was on the cusp. And I was really young in my mental health journey. I didn't have access, to a mentor or someone, like yourself who, and I guess this is why I'm drawn to you and interested in talking to you, is because you do have this really cool relationship with, like, you're very old school, you're gritty, you work hard, you're up early, like you're not screwing around, you're no nonsense. You don't hide that on your social media, you don't hide that on your website. And it's really what, has been a lot of the backbone of your career, but you have this new school attention that you pay to, like, mind and spirit, and you make room for that through your structure. And I think that's, why I've really looked up to you as a resource as I go into this world trying to, lead in my own style and regard. I've really been, I guess proud from my side of the fence to see, how well you've done in the short time we've been friends.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I think that there's obviously the mindset around these things is shifting. And in Pat Quinn's day as a player, he in the 1970s, that stuff wouldn't fly. But now today, you take a look at in the NFL, you got a guy like Pete Carroll who does a lot of things. I don't know exactly in depth what he does, but he is a very different coach than Mike Ditka, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody's getting a whole lot more open to it. And it serves us in two ways. One, there's no argument that meditation is a successful thing. It helps. We got to take that from the Eastern cultures. It is simply fantastic, and their warriors used it. So why wouldn't we use it when we are warriors? And then also, on the flip side, it makes people like myself more comfortable sharing the problem. Would I have been as open about this in the 70s and 80s? I doubt it. I wouldn't have had an audience, and probably would have kept it inside and suffered in silence, which causes you anxiety in the first place. And now we see more celebrities. We see a greater rise in people seeking treatment for it. And I think, the numbers are way up in the number of people who report having it. But I think part of that is like the number of people that are willing to admit they have this problem has gone up as well. So again, it is something that you're probably not going to take the exact same path to get rid of it as I am. You may find that there's a modality that works. I never used any pharmaceuticals. You may need them to, you got to go to your doctor first. You absolutely have to go to your doctor first, get a clean bill of health, and then weigh all the options. I was adamant that I would never use any pharmaceuticals. And so there were some tough nights, but I made it through.
So where do you start with a client, a high performer that comes to you, hires you? There is a strong pattern of self-sabotage. There is a hard relationship with anxiety. Like where do you really start? And of course it's different individual to individual, but that's something I think is so interesting, is that force of momentum, like how people go from 0 to 1 and then they have no problem going from 1 to 100 on their goal. But that inertia, like getting off of 0 and getting out of your own way, is really difficult for a lot of people. And even myself, at times I identify as being type A. I identify as being hardworking. These are, core principles of, how I've built myself and my life and, my parents bestowed upon me as a kid. And it's even like, even I have those days where, I got to rely on like the first sweat rule. You know what I mean? Like you train until you get your first sweat. And then if you feel like, trying again later, fine. But you never do, which is that odd nature, of inertia.
So there's a couple of things that can cause anxiety in any type of high performer. And I think that the way you described experiencing it as a Washington Capital is the same way that a business person or a busy parent who is whether they're a stay-at-home busy parent or whether they have a corporate job busy parent or, a factory job. And I use this analogy, Connor, is that anxiety is caused by having too much clutter in our head. And so if you think of the jigsaw puzzles that we played with as kids, or a lot of people are playing with now during quarantine, is that when you pour that out, or when you pour out a box of Lego, it is a giant mess. And a lot of people have a giant mess up in their head, and they never find any outlet for it. And when you keep everything up in your head, your mind races, your anxiety engine revs, and your wheels spin. And the more that you suppress something, the greater the explosion. So that's why we have to get the jigsaw puzzle pieces, the clutter, out of our head. And whether that's through journaling, whether that's through brain dumping, which is something I tell people to do at the end of every day for productivity purposes, whether it is talking to a therapist, whether it is, quite frankly, I've done over 375 podcast interviews where I've been interviewed, and I have told this story many times, and it is actually therapeutic doing it. My books that I've written about it are therapeutic when I did those. And just getting the junk out of your head is the first step. Now, that seems pretty random, or, well, what do you do from there? So what I help people do is I need to get a clear vision of what matters to you. So we help when an entrepreneur comes to me or an athlete comes to me, and I've worked with a couple guys that this trainer friend of mine, Scott Prohaska, has sent over. Mm-hmm. Scott's, very great trainer. He sent a couple guys my way, and I have them go through their their values and their vision, because your values and vision drive every decision. Your values and vision drive every decision. So your values are, what matters to you, what do you want to accomplish in the next 10 years for your family, your health, your wealth, and the personal experiences side. And people like will write a whole bunch of stuff down for that. And then I move them on to, okay, well, taking that information of knowing what really matters to you in the next 10 years, it's raising a family, it's living here, it's achieving these, accolades or financial rewards at work or through my hockey career. And then, I want to travel here, I want to write a book. And then on my health side, I want to, lose 20 pounds or whatever it is the person wants to do. So like, okay, that's a clear picture of what you want to do. And then they go and they create a vision for their life, generally about 3 to 5 years in advance. And that vision is like a movie script of their life. I'm going to be living here. This is what my family is going to look like. This is what I'll accomplish in my business and my work and my career. And this is what I will have accomplished personally. And now I can sit there, and when they write this out, answering a couple prompts that I give them in some of my books and in my coaching, then all of a sudden I go, okay, I see exactly what you want. And now we look at exactly how they are acting today, what their routine looks like. And here's where the problem comes in, Connor, is that, if anybody's watching this on video or can see it, or if you're not, just imagine I have one hand up at my chest and it's going across my body towards my right. The other hand is underneath that and it's going across my body to the left. And people will say, oh yeah, I want to go in this direction in life. I want to raise well-adjusted children and I want to, lose 20 pounds. And then you see how their days are actually looking. And the action steps take them like this. Well, you work 12 hours a day. You have an hour round trip commute or a 2-hour round trip commute. You eat at Burger King every day. You drink energy drinks. You drink 5 cups of coffee. You don't talk to your wife except for, hey, did you pick the kids up? And you only give the kids 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon because you also work Saturday morning, and then Sunday you golf. Where on earth in that actual performance is anything congruent with what you just said you wanted to achieve? And that's where the anxiety stems from, is the incongruence between our goals and our actions. And this can be that's an extreme example, but this can also be down at the I want to lose 10 pounds level. And I eat a Starbucks Frappuccino and an espresso brownie every afternoon, and then I have a bag of chips after dinner. Well, those actions are incongruent with the goal, and you know it, and you feel hypocritical, and you're ashamed, and all of that stuff drives the anxiety buildup. And if you don't fix it, if you don't cut it off, it's just like putting a lid on a boiling pot, and you just crank up that temperature, and all of a sudden, boom, it explodes. And that's what the anxiety attack, that's how I felt in my hindsight looking at my life. That's what I believe it to be, not getting out of my own head and not living congruently. And that was where the trouble started. So that is where I start with people. And then once they've given me that information, Connor, now we can go down to the brass tacks and say, okay, well, you're going to do this, this, and this, and you're going to stop doing this, this, and this. And now we okay, well, here's how we're going to build the habits to make that change.
Yeah, that skill to reverse engineer to get clear on what you actually want is something that, you do need some stillness. You do need a moment of exhale, to even evaluate what you want. And I that is something, because we are doing this interview on quarantine that I do hope, comes from this, right? There's a lot of grief in the world right now, but I know I have in my own life, I've been grateful for the increased stillness. I've definitely learned a lot about myself, and I'm going through that process right now where even I love my career. I train like a dog. I really try to, study the game and trying to grow, into a more impactful player night in, night out. But part of that is the reason why I started this podcast, really like looking on, there were players that have made the jump, post career that's going to come from, someday for all of us. And they have outside interests. And I think, talking to people like yourself, it really helps me kind of, feed the fire. I just realized too, when you were talking, the brain dump. I don't know if I've ever officially thanked you for that, because I think I've been advising younger players, friends fresh out of college that are, kind of struggling with the next step to do more in their life, that the brain dump has been the absolute best sleep aid that I've added. I've always been a poor sleeper, and I always had, kind of my pitches. I've had a pregame routine forever. Like
Yep.
train, you visualize, you listen to the song, you do a couple big breaths, and boom, you go out and you try to hit like a train and score goals. But you don't see it in the movies, like the post-game routine. And in the NHL, when you're playing 82 or hopefully closer to even 100 games with training camp and the playoffs, you need to have a cool down process, to get back up again. And, where I really started to know I needed a brain dump was when I was a young pro, and I'd be sitting there on a bench. Usually the games I was playing a lot, I'd be too in the flow state to think. But, some of the games where I wasn't getting the minutes, I'd be sitting there and I'd forget I haven't paid my Comcast bill. Like I'd have these like logistical nuances of my life that would, because they didn't live somewhere. They didn't have some sense of organization where I knew they had a safety net. They wouldn't fall to the wayside. And the brain dump is outstanding. I really hope anyone that's listening can give that a shot, particularly pre-bedtime. It has been, super important for me. So what is kind of your next, values and vision? What are you trying to really live out, next for you in this time? Because you've built this successful career, and I know you have this ambition to, continue to do more. You're very impact focused. You're very help focused, which has gifted you a lot of the things that success breeds. But what are you dreaming up next?
Well, it's interesting. There is a few parallels here in that I retired from a career much like you will eventually, and any of the players listening. I retired from the fitness career when I was about 40 years old. So I was selling my information programs from 2001 up to 2015. You can still find them, but we don't promote them. I don't make fitness videos anymore. I have one that's actually been watched 6.5 million times on YouTube, and it still makes me money to this day, which is great. But I just got tired of it, just like eventually some guys get tired of playing. And I had been doing a lot of work on the side, just like you are, of extracurricular work. I was coaching other people, and some of it was paid. And then I decided I was going to make the full leap. I wrote a book. Writing a book is an incredible experience and something that everyone, I think, should do. And they should get a little bit of help first, because I did it the wrong way. I just went and wrote a whole bunch of stuff and then tried to assemble it. The key to writing a book for anybody that ever wants to write one is coming up with the right outline first. Even if you spend an extra month figuring out the outline, it will save you probably a year in writing of the book and editing the book to get it to fit the eventual outline. So I, spent a couple of years writing a book the wrong way, eventually got it out in 2015, and that allowed me to transition into the coaching that I do today. The coaching that I do today, I don't think that I will ever stop, because the coaching that I do right now, it's every single day somebody brings me a new puzzle, a fascinating puzzle with logical problems and then absolutely irrational problems that because of human emotion, and figuring out how to solve these problems is really, really fun for me. And I want to build, the way I would describe it is, I want to build the biggest and best small business coaching program in the world. So if anybody's familiar with Tony Robbins coaching, there's, Tony Robbins has some coaching, but then he has hundreds of Tony Robbins certified coaches out there who deliver Tony's type of method and training to you. And I have systems built, and I have several assistant coaches right now. And my goal is to get hundreds of these assistant coaches out there doing coaching my style with my methods. And the cool thing is that we've built just these great worksheets that when you get people's values and vision out of their head, it's like getting that jigsaw puzzle out of somebody's head, of a box, and then they can assemble it on their own. It's not like we have to assemble it. It just becomes clear through these logical steps. And so I want that system in everybody's hand. I've written books about it. I make videos about it. And I want to, eventually we're going to have to figure out, well, how does artificial intelligence come into this? And all these things, like, it's not going to be the same, coaching world in 5 years from now as it is today. A lot of people will make the best use of technology. Some people will try and do it the old school way and it won't work. Just like coaching in the NHL, it's not the same. I mean,
constantly evolving.
Yeah, you can't, imagine 1970s having a 32-year-old GM or whatever that young guy is for Toronto.
Yeah, Kyle Dubas.
Yeah,
Kyle Dubas
it just doesn't,
the guy who trained for me.
Obviously, he's adapting. There's going to be young coaches coming along, adapting and bringing new methods, and I've got to keep up with that. So I'm really excited for that, because I just know that, the way you described me at the start, no BS, straight to the point, and systems, focus. And we do this, we take this very rigid, disciplinary approach so that when you apply it to the work, it actually gives you more freedom to go and do whatever the heck you want in those hours outside of work. That's the key. Discipline, structure, focus within the work time so that you are free otherwise. It's very much like a really great training session doesn't need to be 3 hours long. A great training session can be short because it's quality training, and that then gives you more time to recover and more time to, enjoy the body that you've built from training and the results of it. So that's my next chapter. I don't have another book exactly outlined in my head, but these days I'm just filming a ton of video and getting better at that skill, and also in my speaking and doing stuff like this.
Well, I think it's so important. You're talking about getting those values and the vision on paper. And it's like, how do you do a jigsaw? To run with that analogy is like, you stare at what the picture looks like on the box. Like if you didn't know what you were aspiring to even create or what this organization should look like, it's very difficult to know which way is up, to have a North Star. I guess that's something that, even, my wife and I, we've talked a lot about it. Like what, we're both 26. We're kind of in a growing up element, age of our life where it's like, okay, what do we want to walk the walk of, the next 5-10 years? What do we want for us? What do we want for ourselves? What do we want for our career? And it's really fulfilling to go there. Like it can be scary a little bit to, kind of scratch at that and start to uncover, your deepest, darkest wants. Cause you do have to stare at, and you have a relationship with this, when you know what you want and you write it in black and white, you write it on paper, you have to kind of deal with the pain that you're not quite there yet. And, you have this relationship with, you talk about it in the perfect day formula where, and I think it's so cool. You have this dual like relationship with perfection where you spend the time to design what it looks like and to pursue it, but you don't let it totally bog and slow you down. And how did you, what's your relationship with that? How did you develop that?
Well, I'm impatient in a way. And so my impatience serves me a little bit in that I would rather just get something done. And I really do want it perfect. But at the end of the day, I want to get it done more than I want it perfect. And so many people let that perfectionism hold them back. I'm much more okay with imperfect action beats perfect inaction. And so it's funny. So right now, my girlfriend is building a beauty coaching program, essentially, and she's doing some social media marketing. And it's been interesting to see me, who, I am totally okay with doing a video once and, oh yeah, I screwed that part up. I don't care. It's going on Instagram. And it's interesting to see somebody who hasn't posted videos before, particularly in that marketplace as well, where image is very, very important. And to, 10 takes to do the video. Well, no, take number 2 was perfect. And eventually being able to help her overcome that. And then she overcomes it, and you realize, if you make a mistake and you put something out there, you realize, oh, wait a minute, nobody made fun of me or anything, and they actually, more people thanked me, and it's funny because, she's been consistent with posting, and now she's getting all these messages saying, you're killing it, and we sit around and laugh, and we go, if these people only knew how much, work goes into this stuff, and they think it's easy and we're pros and all of that. It's not, but simply by taking action, people see that and they make these assumptions that you're doing these, you're the world's greatest, but you're like next to Oprah or J-Lo because you're taking action. And so the big lesson here is if you let perfectionism hold you back, you're going to really be struggling. You're going to get anxiety. And it's actually so much better to become at one with imperfection. And when I was, just getting out of that anxiety phase, it was also when my business really took off in 2006. And I started getting a lot of negative emails, really ridiculous criticism from people. And one day it really got to me. And I gave up and I said, I just got to go for a walk. And it was that walk that really changed my mind about criticism, because I went outside and, nobody's yelling my name. Nobody's throwing rocks at me. I was just able to walk around. Now, when you're a famous pro hockey player in a city like Toronto, you probably wouldn't be able to, to do that. But for 99% of people listening, if somebody criticizes you on the internet, in most cases, it's an anonymous source of criticism. It's not their real name. They're hiding behind it. And these critics are actually cowards. They wouldn't say it to your face. Just like, a hockey fan that's up in the crowd, they would boo somebody, but if they saw them, at the mall in the off season, they'd be the first person to get their photo taken with them. We all know these people, and it's just human nature to criticize. So, going back to the perfection side of things, that was a huge stepping stone for me when I realized at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And that actually, if we want to talk about stoicism and stuff, the stoic approach to life, like, we're all going to die, and, make the most of your life. And so make the most of your life is not hiding behind perfectionism. It's doing and getting things done and making an impact.
Yeah, I love the Stoic philosophy. Ryan Holiday got me into a little bit. I do the daily Stoic every day. It's a little one-pager reflection. I love it because now I'm on my second year of owning it. Mm-hmm. And I used to write notes and things like that. So I'm able to readdress and re-see what my relationship with the text is, now a year later. Right. And it's been really cool. And, I thought it was interesting. You said where, no one's throwing stones at you. And this has been, I got asked a lot because I'm pretty active on social media, and the podcast was a big step. I was pretty fearful of judgment, initially when I launched it. Now it's been a blast. I get great feedback. Right. I get to talk with people like you. It's been a lot of fun. And what I've found is people that are critical kind of throw their stone, and that's the end of them. Like they even if they're going to throw their rock, they do it once and you never hear from them again. Yeah. But the people that you impact with the positivity of your message, or the people that connect with, me and my service and in your coaching, that's real and it sticks. And there's, you go deep with that person where you build a relationship for an extended period of time. I have countless, Instagram friends turn real friends. I have a lot of different close ex-teammates I grew up with and things like that are gaining something from, our podcast and the information and story that we're telling week in, week out. So for me, it's so worth the risk to try to do your best to the sexy word that's out there is serve your genius, Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love it when somebody has been hesitating, and finally just for whatever reason just says, screw it, let's do it, which is the name of one of Richard Branson's books. And when you do say that, you go, because here's the thing that I always say to people, and it's tongue in cheek, but it's serious, is listen, if you are not doing something because of criticism, well, there's already people talking behind your back. There's already people who don't love you and worship you. So you may as well give them something real to talk about and just go out there and step into that greatness, because they're already criticizing you. Give them something to have fun with.
Well, in that Teddy Roosevelt quote about being the man in the arena, is there any that, good for him having the organization, the framework to say that so powerfully. Cause I quote it in my life, all the time.
Yeah. It's not the critic who counts. And I made a video about dealing with critical people today. It just happened to be the video that my team wanted. And I only remember the first line of it, but it is it's not the critic who counts. It's the man in the arena and the blood and sweat and tears and dust and all that sort of stuff. And it's a long quote, but it's a fantastic quote. And I try and encourage people to understand that, because again, when you get feedback from people, and I have spoken at a lot of events of people who have followed me for years, and it's kind of weird, and you'll get this too eventually, oh man, I've been following you for years and all this sort of stuff. And to you can make an impact on people in 179 countries all over the world, and you just don't know what that good will do. And we've heard everything from people: saved marriages, one guy said we saved his soul. Another person, saved me from suicide. All this stuff, all because I did something that I wanted to do that I knew would have good impact. And I don't have any idea how any of these people find me sometimes, but they found me, and they found me at the right time. And I'm just so grateful that I could have an impact like that. And you gotta put, if you're weighing things on a scale, you gotta put that as like, give it a 10,000x versus the criticism, which should be, hardly regarded at all.
Well, I thought what was really cool where, when you were able to take that walk and kind of reframe your relationship with criticism, that sounds like to me like you're able to, in the moment, remove yourself from a little bit of work and just a bit of rest, just a little bit of an exhale, and you were able to totally reorganize. And that's been something that, as a high performer, I want to have focused work. I don't want to have, there's a lot of bleeding I find like in today's world where, you see someone working out, but they're on their phone and they're on social media. And then actually, when they're actually trying to produce something on social media, then they're answering work emails and you know what I mean?
Yeah. When most of the time, the people I'm dealing with, when they're at home, they're thinking about work. When they're at work, they're thinking about home, and they are so non-present that causes a massive amount of stress and anxiety in them as well. So we just want, Jim Rohn, the very famous speaker from a previous era, said, wherever you are, be there. The end. So in your career, do you have any examples of like a rest period that really led to like an exponential breakthrough? Because I want to kind of show our work and show proof that having structure and having routine allows for you to exercise and automate your habits and your genius and your skill set. But how important has rest and sustainability been in your career? Well, when I had those anxiety attacks, I went through a period where I continued to work a little bit, but most of my time was spent on mental recovery. So it was spent reading, it was spent, running across Toronto to go to my Qigong session, and then off to a meditation session, and then, learning about something else. And, I was not training because I don't want to elevate my heart rate any more than it already is. And I started doing long walks, and then I got a dog and started doing long walks with the dog, and I got a lot of mental recovery that way. So it was by going through that dip in my life, it was the lowest point on my hero's journey. It didn't seem like recovery at the time, but it set me up with so many rituals and routines and habits that when I went back into hardcore work, I'm able to withstand exponentially more pressure today. And I'll never have another anxiety attack. You could load me up on caffeine. You could give me 100 coaching calls in a day. You could give me the worst news of my life, and I've got all these tools in my toolbox from that period of time that have served me well. I'll use an analogy here that has also served me well. So when I was 16 years old, I got into weight training and bodybuilding, and I read all the muscle magazines. And I remember reading a magazine, and it listed all these calorie amounts for common foods. And I studied it, and and then I would read maybe a couple more magazine articles. And by just starting a little bit like that, I can go into a restaurant and I can know exactly how much I can eat for 1,000 calories, or how much I'm only allowed to eat for 800 calories. Because of that period of nutrition knowledge that I learned in 3 days, it's kept me lean, even though I don't work out as much anymore. It's kept me lean at 44. I still have 10% body fat, and I don't even train that hard because I know, okay, this is enough. This is how much this is. And I know in general how many calories I need for the day, and I'm good. And so it's those deep dives. That's what you're really looking for. You're looking for leverage points. If I know this information, how can it serve me for the longest time and in the most significant capacity? And that's the type of knowledge and that you want to get, and the type of benefit you get from recovery activities. Like, you do everything you possibly can to recover. You've tried everything, and I think when we talked on my podcast, you said it was sleep. So therefore, you do everything you can to improve the quality of sleep. And if your sleep period is an 8 or 9 out of 10, you can get a little icing on the cake with this supplement or with this treatment or something. But as long as the sleep is dialed in, you have that for the rest of your life. And that is a leverage point that you can play off of into so much more greatness.
Yeah, I think that if I can recommit to that deep work and that deep focus and that skill acquisition, it really is a gift you can keep on giving yourself. And that's, I think, something I'm, trying to discover and explore even now. Because when I was 4 or 5, all the way to 15, 16, that's what I did. I thought this way. I thought, I want to play in the National Hockey League someday. I want to be able to have the career, the salary, the stability. I haven't had a ton of that in my career, but it's something I'm working towards. And I really thought along those lines. Like, I want to be able to gift myself the experience of being able to live out my dream. And now I'm really trying to engage in another, this has been a really fun passion of mine and really a great source of momentum for other areas of my life. And, I think, you nailed it where you talked about, sleep and keeping the main thing, and investing in what'll give you the biggest bang for your buck. Craig, I know you've got a role, here shortly, but one question I've been asking, a lot of my guests is, what in the world right now sorry, how did I want to phrase this? What I've been asking a lot of my guests is what in the world right now is lighting you on fire? So, I talk about it like a thought that's pulling on mom and dad's shirt, and they're having an adult conversation. What has been, really just been a source of ambition for you, a thought that you want to leave people with as we are still on quarantine. It's interesting times, and as someone that you do deal with a lot of this entrepreneurial anxiety and performance, I think you'd be an awesome person to talk with that about.
Well, the thing that's really getting me excited is, if it wasn't for the pain that the quarantine is causing a lot of people, this is the most exciting time of my career. The problems that I'm solving for people. I have a lot of clients whose businesses have actually never been better. Those in the health and nutrition space, because people are flooding into buying nutritional supplements. And I have a lot of clients who own supplement companies. And so helping them solve those problems. And then on the flip side, helping people get creative about saving their businesses and saving their financial futures. And then seeing them succeed has been absolutely mind expanding. And what I've discovered is that there are some people that will lean into troubles, and there are some people that shut down and run away. And, all I can say is that you can't run away from your problems. And whether it is anxiety that I tried to run away from, I could have solved it if I would have leaned into it and had difficult conversations. And if you have a business and things are struggling right now, it's not going to get better by going and having a 6-pack of beer after work. You're not going to get rid of your problems like that. If you're a guy who's on the edge of, making the team or not making the team, it's not going to get any better if you just hold all your problems inside and you don't ask mentors and coaches, like, what could I do better? Being open, honest, and vulnerable and asking for help and setting the ego aside is one of the most important things you can do. And then when you know the path, it is committing to the path, committing to it, having a lot of non-negotiables in your life that make a lot of success easy. So I have non-negotiables, like I get up at 3:57 a.m. every single day. That is non-negotiable for me. I write for and do 1,500 words at some point. That's my word count for the day. I do 30 minutes hard exercise. I do a couple other things every single day. They are non-negotiable. I will always do them. And by having those things in place, they give my life routine and security and that structure that we all need when the chaos is happening outside. You know what? We need ourselves to be structured, because if we let ourselves get chaotic, then all of a sudden the anxiety will build up. So my message to everybody is figure out what works for you. Build a structured system around it so that you get the basics done every day, and then lean into difficult conversations, find the path, the right path for you, and then just put your head down And, if it's a steep mountain, you got to climb it. If it's a muddy hill, you got to climb it. There's no other option, because what else are you going to do? Quit? Never, not you.
Craig, thank you for sharing that, and really just being a living leader and embodying a lot of these habits. You do walk the walk. And I think you do a really good job talking the talk in an organized way that, people can digest and apply to their own life. Craig, I appreciate it. I'm sorry we can't, grab a smoothie or hit up Jacob's Steakhouse there in Toronto.
Yeah. Someday.
In due time, man. In due time.
And sushi when you come out here in normal, new normal times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if people want to grab my book, they can go to freeperfectdaybook.com, which is my first book, Perfect Day Formula. And then I actually love email. So if anybody ever wants to email me, they can email me at craig@godfather.com. That's my real email address, craig@godfather.com. And then if you're an Instagram type person, I'm on there the most. So you can find me at real Craig Ballantyne. Get a hold of me any way that you need to. It's my life's mission to help people overcome the anxiety and get through whatever they're getting through, so that they can go and then just, accelerate in life.
I appreciate your time today, and thanks for your excellence, and I look forward to talking to you again, man. Have a good rest of your day, all right?
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Craig, clearly an exceptional individual. He really walks the walk. I talked about it in the intro. I knew we'd talk about it in the podcast. I really appreciate his sense of accountability, looking into your pain, understanding how to build a life of authenticity, a life of alliance, to get clear on those values and that vision, like Craig talked about. I also, want to re-bring up how discipline equals freedom. That's something I know Jocko talks a lot about, which is a podcast I listen to often. A lot of the high performers that I look up to in my life have this really clear sense of when you tackle the things that mean the most to you in your life and create time and room for them, it allows you to have better rest time and kind of have these, we talk about it in the Robin Sharma podcast too, like the dual cycles of high performance and achievement. And finally, one of the things that I love talking with Craig about is his sense of impact. I think, Craig does consult with a lot of business coaches and how to improve profits and revenues and how those fill the bank account. But you can tell the true happiness from his career is his sense of fulfillment, his sense of service, and how it fills the soul. It's something that I'm trying to do more of in my life, trying to look at, where I can lead, what garden, is near me that I can tend to, that I can touch. And it's something I urge you, our listener, to go inward and check in on some of these things with yourself and see where you can be bigger in your life. Thank you again for joining us today. I really look forward to next week. And that's it for today's Connor Carrick podcast. Lastly, I want to thank our listener. Please continue to leave a 5-star review, comment, like, subscribe, share with friends and family. It really helps us grow this podcast, grow our platform, and really feel good about myself, frankly, because if you leave a 4-star review, I'll probably stop doing the podcast. I'm just kidding. If there were any memorable quotes in particular that you loved from Craig today, also, I want to ask that you send them to me on social media, either on Twitter or on Instagram, and just do hashtag CCPod. I'm really curious what is sticking with you, our listener, and give me some insight on topics that you'd like to hear more about. So please join me and give me some feedback that way, and I look forward to next week.